Hey there and welcome to another PSD Tuts spoon-fed Photoshop tutorial. I'm Gavin Steele and I'm going to be taking you through Alex's high-flying snowboard illustration. So let's have a look at what we're going to be creating in today's screencast. Okay, as you can see, we've got a cool little stylized snowboarder here in the middle of a trick. We've got some brushes, some snow coming up, we've got some cool font and just a really nice stylized image. And can't forget these really cool lines that are going to take up some of this tutorial. So I'm going to take you through all the steps in creating these 3D lines and this great effect with this snowboarder. So as per usual, check out psdtuts.com and you'll check out all the steps there. Some great description on why things are chosen. We're going to start off in Illustrator. You can do these steps in Photoshop, but we're going to start off in Illustrator and get started with these lines down here, and then we're going to bring the image together towards the end. Okay, so start up Illustrator. Just grab any size canvas, really, about, I don't know, I think this is about 600 by 700 by 600 or something like that. It doesn't really matter, we're just going to grab the brush tool and I've selected this pink colour. Okay, and we're just going to draw out some of our lines. So starting from the top right, we kind of want them to come diagonally across from top right to bottom left. So I'm just going to draw them out like so. Have little flicks here and there. Try and keep in mind that your snowboard is going to be somewhere in the middle, so you might want to have a few less lines in this area and a few more down towards the bottom. But we're going to be copying these layers, we're going to be modifying them and repeating them and stuff. So just have, get a feel for it for now. Just try out different shapes. Something. Okay, and then we can change the size. Get a couple of bigger strokes going. Like so. We come up to the top here. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Once you've got your first set of lines done, we're just going to head up to Effect. We're going to Command A, select all of them, click on Effect. We're then going to come down to 3D, and we're going to go to Extrude and Bevel. And you may want to make sure that you've got preview checked, but for this one all we're going to do is change the extrude depth to 1 point and then leave all the other settings as they are and click on OK. And you can hardly see the change that makes, but if we just zoom in a little bit, you can just see the little bit of shadow adding that thickness to those lines. So I'm going to zoom back out. Okay, once you've done that, we're going to head over to Photoshop. And you can see this is the image that I managed to create, so I'm just going to close that or minimize that down. We're going to go to File and create a brand new document. And we're going to have that document set in centimeters, and we're going to have it set to a width of 19 and a height of 13. We've also got the resolution set to 300, and I'm just going to change the color back to RGB and click on OK. So I'm just going to move around my canvas just so you can see all of it on screen. Something like that. And then just zoom out to about 25% for now. That's brilliant. Okay, so before we copy and paste in our lines, we just need that to add some background color. So to do that, we're going to come to the gradient tool. And I'm just going to set my foreground color here to 23, 8D, 8B. And then I'm going to set my background color. I'm going to set that to 48 BE BC. Click on OK and switch them back around. Come up to the toolbar at the top and you can see using our foreground and background colors we can create a nice little gradient, and we're going to have that going from top to bottom. Make sure you start with the darker color on the top and the lighter color at the bottom, and again you can play around with, if I undo that, if you just drag to there, have a shorter dark area at the top or a little bit longer. So once you've got your background set, we're going to bring in those lines. So we're going to go back to Illustrator, I'm going to Command C and copy them, and back into Photoshop and Command V, I'm just going to paste those in as a smart object and click on OK. And they look pretty good. I'm just going to maybe angle them just a little bit more. Let's bring that one down, that looks good. And I'm going to hit enter. Okay, it's going to take a couple of seconds just while it loads that up. Brilliant, so that's pasted those in. Okay, we're going to go back. I'm going to delete all of those lines and I'm going to sample, if I leave Photoshop open, but change to Illustrator. I'm going to grab my selector tool down here and clicking on my canvas here, I'm just going to drag down to the bottom and select a cayenne color, bring it back in, and then again using the brush tool, this time we're going to create some little lines in that light green color, that cayenne color. Again, little flicks off here and there. Okay, I'm just using a mouse for this. You probably get some really nice shapes with your Wacom tablet, but that looks pretty good. Something down there, and okay, I'm pretty happy with that. And again, select them all, Command A, head up to Effect, go to 3D, Extrude and Bevel, and we're just going to change the extrude depth to 1 pixel, and click on OK. It's a really simple little technique this. So we're going to Command and copy that. We're going to go back into Photoshop, Command V, paste it in as a smart object. I'm just going to change the angle of that slightly, bring that down to the bottom, like so. Okay, looks pretty good, and I'm going to hit enter, and that's going to load that in. So we should have 2 sets now, one of the red color lines and one of our cayenne color lines. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're just going to turn off the cayenne level by using the eye over here on the layer. We're going to duplicate our reds layer. Okay, once you've done that, we're going to apply that as a clipping mask. So hold down Alt and just see how the pointer changes from the finger into those 2 little circles, and we're going to select that. Once you've done that, we're going to right click on the layer and we're going to rasterize it. And now this time, once we've rasterized it, we're just going to move it. So I'm going to zoom in just to see what effect that has on our lines. So with the move tool selected up here on the right, I'm now just going to use the arrow keys and we're just going to shift it a little bit to the right and to the left and so on, just so we get a nice little effect. That's it. You can even use the mouse a bit, just so we start getting these lines down here that kind of just break up the line a little bit. And again, they add a bit of shadow, add a bit of depth. Again, let's zoom in. Just little lines like here and here. And in the final image, these will really, really help out. So again, you can see that line coming right across the middle. Well, I hope you can on the screencast. So once you've done that, I'm just going to zoom back out to 25%. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to turn on the cayenne layer and we're going to do exactly the same to that. So you can hit Command J, that'll duplicate that layer, hold down Alt, use a clipping mask, and then again rasterize that new layer, and again just zoom in to make sure we can see what effect moving around is going to have. I'm going to click V on my keyboard to change to my move tool, and I'm just going to move everything slightly to the right, and again hopefully you can just see, zoom in a little bit more. Okay, you can see these little lines, little shadows going across, just gives a nice little effect, and it really adds to the final image. So once again I'm going to zoom back out. Okay, once you've done that, we're going to create the rest of our lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these 2 here and I'm going to hit drag them down to a new layer. Then with the move tool, I'm just going to move that layer up and to the right, and I'm just going to flip it vertically and then horizontally. Maybe just have that just trailing off to the top. Excuse me. And while that transform takes place, we're going to grab these bottom red lines, and again, actually all 2 of them. Grab those 2, duplicate those 2, and again with the V tool, the move tool, just going to drag them up and transform them, flip vertically and then flip horizontally. Again, you can go back into Illustrator, make your own colours, your own lines, just make it a bit more personal, but this tends to work pretty well. Okay, hit enter, and then I'm just going to bring that back down again. I'm going to start to fill out this area down at the bottom. So again, duplicate that layer, or those two layers at a time, and we're just going to drag that straight back down, and we're just going to start to build up this area down at the bottom. Okay, you're going to hold down Alt, drag to the left, and then I'm just going to flip that horizontally and vertically. There we go. And just bring that down like so, and then I'm going to do the same with just some of the cayenne colours. I'm just going to fill out this bottom area. So grab those cayenne layers, it should be those two there, and when you've selected those two, instead of dragging it down here, I can just hold down Alt and I can move them around. Okay, I've got the wrong layer there, so let's grab these two, let's just duplicate them, and hopefully, no, red ones again. Hopefully I should be able to get the cayenne one, so duplicate that layer. No, let's see where they've gone. There we go, these two right here. So drag them down to the new layer, move to the right, excuse me, and we're just going to move these down like so. Again, transform really quickly, horizontal and vertically. I'm just going to pad out this bottom area down here. Okay, once you've got your two background colours or your two little highlight colours, we're going to have one line going down through all of them. And to do that, we're going to change the colour. So we need to select the colour of the pants, basically, is the colour that we're going to use. So I'm going to type that in. We're going to use C5 A7 8A. Okay, and that's this greyish colour here. And this is going to be size 3. I really want this to be a big wiggly line like that. Okay, not so much in the middle there, but just like really drastic line like that. Let's increase the size of that stroke to 3. Head over to Effect, 3D, Extrude and Bevel, and again change that from 50 point to 1 and click on OK. And that looks pretty good. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's zoom in and have a look. Yeah, we've got some nice shading. It's definitely 3D. So select that, copy it, head back into Photoshop, and we're going to paste that right down the middle here. Like so. We might even want to just stretch that out just a little bit. Okay, hit enter. Okay, that looks pretty good. Snowboard is going to sit right here, right in the middle. So once you've got your lines in place, and don't worry, we're going to play around with the colour schemes and things like that later, and it's just all going to really come together. So I'm going to move on to adding our snowboarder now. So you need to head over to the link and to the site, and all the stock images are linked to there. You can see here this free one from Stock Exchange. There's some other great snowboarding pictures as well, but the one we're going to use is this one right in the middle, Snowboarder in Air 3. And there it is. I just unselect that in its full resolution. And these are the brushes that we're going to be using from Bitbox. Some great free brushes on there. The font we're going to use is the Sega font. We've actually used it in some of the other tutorials, so you might already have that. If not, head over here to defont.com and just download that. And we're going to use a sky a little bit later on. So head over to the Stock Exchange and grab this image from the link on the PSE Tuts, and download it to your H drive. We're going to start using it in this project right now. And I've actually got mine already downloaded onto my desktop, so I've taken it into Photoshop. If I just load that up, and I just spent some time, bring that in a bit, just spent some time cutting it out. I did just a really basic cutout for this. I duplicated the layer, I desaturated it, I played around with the hue and the contrast and hue and saturation, and then I literally just used the magic lasso tool to go around and select and cut it out from the background. There's plenty of tutorials on how to select things, so I'm not really going to go through that in this tutorial. Once you've got them all cut out, we're just going to drag them into our current document. Okay, so I'm just going to grab him and drag him straight on, and then move him into the middle area, something like so, and then I'm just going to minimize him down. Okay, so we've got him in place, and at the minute he just stands out on top of everything, so we need to make a couple of adjustments. The first thing that we need to do is we need to play around with the hue and the saturation, or just the hue actually. So head over to Image Adjustments, come down to Hue and Saturation, and we're just going to change the hue to -11, and then click on OK. So hopefully that's changed. Let me just double check. Yep, if I just zoom in, we'll look at his trousers. Okay, and I apply that again. We've just muted the colour slightly on his trousers. So I'm going to zoom back out, 25%. Okay, so once we've got him in place, spend a little bit of time trying to position him. Where exactly do you think he's going to go? Okay, maybe here, something like that. Looks pretty good. Now you could spend more time, go back to your line drawings and have a few bending up, bending down. So I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to quickly go back into Illustrator. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to grab that pink colour. So if we just come down here, and that pink colour we used was, what was it? Let me go and grab it with the ink drop with the eyedropper. Was this pink here, which is D7385C. And again, with the brush tool, I'm just going to draw out, but I want them to come up to the top a little bit, so a few that just like maybe broke away. Like so. Select them all. I'm going to 3D them again, so head into extrude, just change that to 1 point on the extrude depth. Click on OK. Copy them, come back in and just paste them as smart objects straight over the top. Again, we can play around with the angle just a bit. There we go. I'm just going to sit just about there, and then head to. And again, you can go back in, delete some of the layers, add some of the layers, however you wish, just to get that final look. So once you've positioned them and you've changed your hue down to -11, we're going to position some of the lines. So we're going to use the select tool. If I just zoom in down here, okay, and we might not want, for example, you might not want this line here to go over the actual leg. So what we can do is we can just grab the pen tool, and it doesn't really matter what layer we're on for now, and we're just going to come in around the leg, like so, and you can go around the arms if you want to do it over the arms or wherever you might be, and make that a selection, set that to 0. Okay, and then we're on the vector layer at the minute, so you can just go to layer, we can go to layer mask, and we can hide the selection. Ooh, inverse first, and then go layer, layer mask, and hide the selection. You can see that line that was going across the boot now goes behind it. And that kind of adds to the idea that these strands, or these little ribbons, or whatever you want to call them, come across the board and then go between, between his leg, or you can have them so it looks like they're going under the arm. Might have it so it's, it's popping out over here. So again, just going to come down the arm, come across, like so. Maybe even come up this one. Again, make it a selection. Inverse that selection, and then layer, layer mask. Oop. Make sure you're on the actual layer itself. Layer, layer mask, and why can't I do that? Okay, it's not letting me do that for now, so I'll just move on. But that might be because I should have done all this. That's what I should have done. I should have done all the selections at the same time, and then gone to layer, layer mask, and mask off the areas that we had selected. So anyway, I've done it for the foot layer down here. You can see that it gets cut off there, and that would have worked if I'd done that all at the same time. Once you've got the layers as you want them, we're going to get our brush tool and we're going to start putting in some of these brushes. So I'm just going to zoom back out 25%. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to head over to top of this layer stack and create a new layer. Head over to the brush tool, and then from my brush selection, bring these down a little bit. Right at the bottom I've got these that I just downloaded. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring them over just so I can see the shape of them, and I kind of want one that's a bit heavy on the top layer, or the top part of the brush, which this one is. And I'm just going to select that darker area and decrease the size of my brush a little bit. And I'm just going to paste over, or use the brush over the bottom left hand side just to fade out some of these areas. You might even want to lower the opacity down just a little bit, change between the different brushes that are provided in the download. Again, just decrease the size a little bit. Until you get something that looks like that. And again, just change between the brushes. Okay, looks pretty good. Bit of spray over to the left. Again, just so we can bring down that layer's opacity. Okay, that looks pretty good. And once you've done that with the cayenne colours, okay, you want to make sure you've got this bottom bit down here, and maybe again just a little bit up. Just coming up from the bottom left here, so just coming up here and maybe bursting off him or away from him. Then we're going to add our white ones, so our white brush strokes. So again, back to your brush tool. Again, just looking at the different brush shapes, think about where they might go. Okay, that looks pretty good, like it's coming off the board there. I'm just going to put that onto its own layer. Get a bit closer. Okay, that looks pretty good. And a couple down the bottom. Just going to decrease the size of the brush here. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of these lines. I'm going to bring some of these brush strokes just down a little bit, but still above, and just have those lines going over and some obviously going behind. Let's just zoom in and have a quick look at how that looks. Okay, that looks pretty good. And they're some really, really great brushes. I mean, the detail in them is really good. You can use them on pretty much any size image. Okay, so it's starting to take shape a bit. It looks like this is like, breaking away from the board. It looks pretty good. Okay, so once you've done that and you've dealt with positioning those brushes, and you can add as many or as little as you want to get the effect that you need. And we're going to move on now. We're going to add a little bit of green and a little bit of pink to our image. Okay, just going to increase the color palette a little bit. So again, we're still going to be using these brush shapes, but we're just going to change the color. We're going to start off with a green, and that's going to be 3B, AA, 7C, and click on OK. And that's going to come up from behind the snowboarder. So Again, we want one that kind of grows up. That looks pretty good. Stick that in there. Just make sure it's on its own layer. Okay, and then we're going to grab a pink, and that's going to go right behind the border. So I'm going to bring these below the snowboarder. Just call this SB. And we're going to create a new layer, and this one's going to be pink, and that pink color is going to be BC3253, and click on OK. Change your brush again, and let's think about the kind of thing that might be bursting up or just behind him. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to do a color adjustment. We're going to go to the very top of the stack. We're going to go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer. We're going to come down to Gradient Map, and the first one we're going to choose is one of the presets. It's going to be this purple to orange. So we'll just select that, click on OK. We're going to set the mode to screen, and we're going to reduce the opacity right down to 90%, so not down that much actually, but down nonetheless. Then we're going to do another gradient map, so again, New Adjustment Layer, Gradient Map, click on OK, and we're just going to customize this one a little bit, so click on the gradient, hopefully I can get this up, OK, and we're going to start with an orange color which is set to FF6 EO or E02. Click on OK. In the middle we're going to have a green color which is set to 7B 7B37, and then we're going to click on this orange one over here, click to the right, that will duplicate it. I'm just going to bring that over, pull the black layer off or the black swatch off, and you should have orange, green, orange. And again, click on OK, click on OK. And once you've done that, we need to set that to 20% or 30%. Okay, that looks pretty good, and we can leave that on normal for now. And that looks pretty good. Okay, next thing we need to do is add our text. So make sure you head over to the site, download the text. There it is. Okay, from dafont.com, and it's the Sega text, and we're going to use that in the next section of this tutorial. So hopefully you've downloaded that, you've unzipped it, and you've double clicked on it, or done whatever you have to do to install it on PC or your Mac. Usually it's just a double click, and we're ready to start using it. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop, and we're going to change to the font tool. I'm not happy with this background layer here, so I just want to change this gradient map. 30% is good, but let's change that to soft light. There we go, it looks much better. Okay, so head over to your text tool, and we're going to select the color, and the color that we're going to use for our text is going to be EOBD9B, and click on OK, and make sure you've got the right font. Let's see if I can, there it is, the Sega font, and I'm going to click near enough to the board, and we're going to type in Ali, and we're going to make that nice and big. Okay, just move that down a bit. Okay, and it's worked out that the board's on a pretty good angle with the A as well, so kind of ties the image in, which is pretty good. Straight away we're just going to duplicate that layer. Okay, you can hit Command J, that duplicates it, and then we're going to move that layer. Press V on your keyboard or just select the move tool over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to move that left and up, just a tiny little bit, maybe 2 pixels or 1 pixel. And then with that new layer, we're going to change the color. We're going to change it to a slightly darker color, C7 A9 8C, and click on OK. There we go. Okay, so we're going to add some layer styling, so double click on that layer, and we're going to add bevel and emboss, and we're going to make sure it's in a bevel even, smooth, make sure it's set to 100% up, and we're going to change the size to 2 pixels. You can leave soften at 0. We're going to change the angle from 120 to 114. We're going to change the altitude down here to 26, and we're going to decrease everything else from 75 to 30 and our shadow mode to 0, and then we're going to add a gradient overlay, and that's going to be set to normal, 21%. It's going to go from white to transparent, so double click on your swatch there, we're going to set that to white, double click on the top one at the end and reduce that right down from 100 to 0, click on OK, and then make sure it's set to linear with align with layer checked. The angle is going to be -146 and 100% for the scale, and click on OK. And there we go, we've got our text. Now you might want to move this underneath that text, play around with it, but I think it looks okay. On top again, we're going, you're going for the colours of your image. We're trying to tie in everything here. This colour here that goes with the pants, this with the pants, the pink from the jacket. I'm just trying to get a really good little colour scheme going. So once you've done that, you've duplicated your text, moved it into place, and you've added that layer style, the next thing we need to do is we're going to add a new layer. Okay, so come down here and check the new layer. And in this layer we're going to use white and green brush, and we're going to apply it over the lettering. So grab your brush tool, you can use the previous layer that we've used, and again we're just going to use white just to go a bit over. Don't worry about it going over the rest of the image, we're only worried about the bit that's over the lettering. Okay, so I might just do a little bit there, and there. And then we're going to grab a light green colour. I'm going to select one of the colours that's already on the palette down here. Click on OK. And again, coming down from the top and through the L's. Now, to only apply that to the lettering, if we hold down Alt and again use a clipping mask, or clipping layer, sorry, you can stick that in like so. And then when we zoom in, you can see it's only applied it to the text, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so we're going to zoom out, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to play around with adding the last bit, the alley-oop, and some sky. So again, head over to your text tool, and we're going to stick that down here like so, and we're going to put in oop, and again make sure you've got the same font color selected. So if I just click back on this layer, and we have a look at what that was. It was EOB D9B. Just going to copy that, click on OK, come back to my oop, paste that in there. Okay, position it. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then don't forget we're going to duplicate that layer, and then with the new one we're going to get this color C7A 98C, and again and then with the V tool we're just going to move that to the left a couple and up, and we're going to apply our bevel and so on. So make sure that's all set to, I'm going to set that down to 0, and I think that was set to 35. In fact, I can come down here, right click, I should be able to copy my layer style, excuse me, you can probably tell I'm coming down with a bit of a cold, and then I right click again on the layer I want to apply it to, and I can paste the layer style, and it just pastes exactly the same as the other layer. And I'm going to go back in with my brush tool and on my new layer apply a couple more effects with the brushes, and again just use a clipping mask, hold down Alt, select between there, and it only applies to this particular oop. Okay, so mine's, the font's a little bit more grungy than in the original one, but it still looks pretty good. The next thing we need to do, we need to zoom in and have a look at these lines, and we need to determine where the shadow is going to lie for these lines. So using the auto select layer, I'm going to make sure I select the layer with these lines on. Okay, so again up here make sure you don't have group selected, you've got layer selected, and I'm going to try and just grab that layer. Doesn't want to work for me. Let's zoom out. Okay, for some reason that's not working. Let's head back. It should be one of the last ones that we actually created. Okay, not that one. Not that one. Yes, this one here. Or do I want to get those ones there? I think I want to get these ones in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer I've got selected, and I'm just going to zoom out. I have to zoom in. Okay, so this layer here, okay, the one that comes straight across, I'm going to duplicate this layer right here. So Command J that, and then I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to transform that layer, and I'm going to flip it horizontally, flip it vertically, and then I'm just going to bring it over our lettering so we do have some of it going over the lettering. Hit enter, and then I'm going to bring that layer, once it's finished transforming it, above my alley and above my oop, like so. And if we zoom in, you can see they're coming over the letters. So I want to create some shadow for this, so again I'm going to duplicate that layer, and I'm going to right click, or make sure I mask it to that layer. Right click, I'm going to go to rasterize, and I'm going to go to image, adjustments, and desaturate, and then I'm going to go to filter and blur, and Gaussian blur, and just enough to make it look like a shadow, so 4 or 5 pixels. Yep, 3 or 4 to 5, depending on how thick your lines are. Click on OK, and then using the move tool, you're just going to move it to the right. Let's turn that clipping mask on, I don't know why I put that in there. Okay, and you can see that just by moving it to the right, you start to get a really nice effect and start to see that, it starts making it stand out from the lettering. And again, you just got to get a feel for how far you want that line to look, that it's away from the actual lettering. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to lower the opacity down a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to zoom out and take a look at how that looks. Okay, that looks pretty good. But the problem is we've got some of this shadow over the areas down here at the bottom. Now you could go in with the brush tool, you could just delete those areas out, but it might take a little bit longer than you want to spend on it. So what we can do is we can bring that layer over the top here, like so. Okay, that doesn't seem to want to work. Okay, so you might have to erase that. I'm not sure why that's not working. Let me just zoom in and have a look. I know what I can do. If we command click on, if we control Z that, go back. So we've still got them there. If we command click on our oop, or on our alley even, okay, and then we can just hit delete or inverse the selection, and I can just hit delete, command deselect, and you can see now that's only applied it to where it's over the lettering. And again, because the oop is on a separate layer, you can do exactly the same to these bits, but it's just caught that one little bit coming over here, which is really nice. And you can do exactly the same with these parts that are coming over the jacket. And again, you just select that layer wherever it may be. Didn't do a very good job of naming my layers, did I? Let's see if we can get in the right area. Got a feeling these ones are further down. For some reason don't seem to be able to use my auto select my move tool. There we go. Okay, so again the same thing with these layers here. I'm going to duplicate it, Command J, and then I'm going to Command Shift U will desaturate that layer, and then we're going to go to Filter, Blur, and before we do that, make sure you rasterize the layer. Desaturate it. We're going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and again have it on about 3 or 4. Click on OK, and we're going to move that just a couple to the right, maybe not even that much. And I'm just going to bring that down, the opacity down, like so, and that should be underneath that layer. If we just zoom out, those little details are just going to make it just stand out that little bit better. Okay, starting to look pretty good. And the last thing to do really is to add this image of the sky. Okay, so again I've already got that open in Photoshop. This huge big image here. So let's just go back to our image, grab our image, throw it on top. I'm going to bring that right to the top of the layer pack, or the layer stack, sorry, and put that at the top. We're going to set that to, we're going to desaturate it, so Command Shift U. We're going to set it to overlay and reduce the opacity down to about 30%. Okay, just look, I think 30 might be a little bit low. Okay, that looks pretty good. Close that down, and that is basically the tutorial. So it's a nice quick one. Some really great tips there on using clipping mask, on creating these lines down here using the shadow tool, or creating our own shadows. I'm just going to zoom in on the final image, and the more time you spend with each of these line layers, the better you're going to get, the better shadow you're going to get across the lettering. But I think it looks pretty good. Probably not as good as the original, but you know, it looks pretty good, and I like the color scheme. I like the way it stands out. It all ties in really well. So hope you enjoyed that tutorial. I've been Gavin Steele, taking you through Alex's high-flying snowboard illustration. Here's Elliot picture, which looks like that. Don't forget to check out all of our other videos over at PSD Tuts Spoon-Fed Photoshop Tutorials and the video section, and drop us a comment or something, and hopefully I'll get back to you. So thanks very much.